Hey guys, just a quick video today on helping you guys get started with arrays. And the first thing I want you guys to do is, if you remember our test.php file where we used what we used to create our compound interest calculator, I just want you to save that and rename it to something else. For example, compound interest.php, and we'll go back to it later. So we'll make a copy of that file in your htdocs folder under examp, and we're going to change our copy to let's call it array.php or arrays.php. So open up arrays.php in Notepad 2 by just simply dragging it to the Notepad 2 window. And basically we want to get rid of everything inside the PHP tag. Actually, let's just get rid of all the writing, all the HTML code as well. So basically, when you open this up in localhost, so localhost /array.php, you're just gonna get a blank file at the moment. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is create an array. Now the way you create an array is, well, firstly, let's explain what an array is. So for example, let's say I wanted to record the names of 3 students. So I might have a variable called student1, and I call it I assign the value ed, and then I have student 2 is John, and student 3 is Brian. Alright, so I have 3 separate variables. Now this is going to be a little bit inefficient if I keep creating a new variable name just to add in a separate name. So instead of doing that, I'm going to have an array, which is basically a collection of values inside one single variable. Alright, so let's call it, the first array, let's call it students equals array, and we can simply just put the 3 names inside one array. Alright, so I have students all inside one array, and if I save that, and let's talk about how to use the array. So if I echo students 1 inside the not sure what you call this type of bracket inside the square brackets, what's going to happen is if I echo that, it's just going to echo John. So if I refresh that, see how the word John comes up. And the reason is because the first value in the array actually has an index of 0. So if I echo array the index 0 inside students, the first name comes up. Right, so I'm going to echo students 1, 0, 1, and 2. And echo students 2. Refresh that, and you can see that it's echoing all three names. Now, the interesting thing is, instead of doing that, I'm just gonna use a for loop that's going to help me print out all of these names without repeating the echo statement. The way you do that is if you use a for loop, and I'm gonna create another variable called x or n or k or whatever it is you want. Let's say I equals 0. So initially the first index is 0, and when the variable I is smaller than the length of the array, now all you have to do to get how many positions there are in the array is you use the function count. Now the function count will just tell you straight away how many values there are in the array, and in this case it's going to be 3. Alright, so count how many positions there are inside students, and we're going to increase the variable I by 1. And instead of repeating the echo statement 3 times, we can just echo the ith element in the student array. So this should produce the same output. So already you can see that there is an error, and the error is let's just see if we can find that. Undefined constant I. Oh, it's just inside the student array. I should put a $sign there so it knows that it's a variable that I'm looking for. Okay, so refresh that. It's obviously worked. Okay, so if we want to wrap lines after each output, I'm gonna echo BR line break, and so it goes Ed John Bryan. Okay, so now we want to talk about a different kind of array, which is called an associative array. So the first kind of array that we use is called an indexed array. Now we're gonna try another kind called the associative array, and that's when the index, which is the position of the elements, they don't have to be integers. So right now we're referring to these 3 names using student 0, student 1, student 2. Now let's say we create an array to represent the features of a particular person. Alright, so let's say I'm going to create an array for a person which I'm going to name John. So John is an array, and his hair color is blonde. his hair color is blonde. His height is 183 centimeters, and his weight is 80 kilograms. Alright, now the way you would refer to values in the array is if you echo John with the square brackets, and hair color is now the index, and which we're gonna call a key. Right, so I'm gonna refer to the hair color, and notice how it is case sensitive. Echo John's hair color, and if you echo that and you refresh here, an error again, line 18, hair color. What have I done wrong now? Don't see. Oh, I didn't put a semicolon here. Okay, so now I have just echoed blonde. So I refer to the word blonde using the key hair color. So I can echo John's height, for example, and it's just gonna echo 183 centimeters. So this kind of array is called an associative array. Alright, so you might say, well, how do we loop through this array? Alright, because if we use a for loop, that's easy because the index of the elements are integers, and we can just go for I equals 0, I is smaller than something, I plus plus. It loops through all the values in the array. But the way you would do it with an associative array is you need to use the for each loop, for each. And the way it works is if you go for each, and I'm just going to do the index array first, so I'm going to comment out all of this for loop, and I'm just going to use the for each loop to achieve the same effect. So if you go for each and you use the students array, and what happens is it's going to cycle through each element in the array. It's going to cycle through each element in the array and then do whatever you want with that element. So if I go for each students as, let's say, name. So basically it's going to cycle through each element in the students array and store the content of that element into the variable name. And I'm just gonna go echo name and echo the BR tag. Okay, so if I save that, you can see that it still works. It still does Ed John Bryan. Okay, so that's how the for each loop works. Instead of using the for loop, we use the for each loop, and that cycles through each element in the array. Now we can use this loop on the associative array because it doesn't require us to have a numerical index. So if I simply copy this loop here and I change the variable students to John, and I'm going to store the content. I'm going to store the contents by getting the key or the feature and the description. Okay, so basically we have the feature of John is the index or the key, and the content of that element is stored under description. Okay, so we're gonna echo using the echo statement. I'm going to echo the phrase John has a, and then I'm going to use the dot, which is the concatenation operator. John has a, and then I'm going to echo his feature, and then I'm going to echo another space of, and I'm going to echo the description, and I'm going to echo full stop and BR, and let's just see what happens. Oh, don't forget the semicolon. So if I refresh that, John has a hair color of blonde. John has a height of 183 centimeters. John has weight of 80 kilograms. Now I know that there's grammatical errors in that statement, but you can sort of figure out how it works. Probably need a bit of space there. And I'm just gonna comment this out just so you can see it a bit better. Delete this. Okay, so if you see that again, John has a hair color of blonde. John has a height of 183. John has weight of 80 kilograms. Okay, so hopefully this tutorial can help you get started with arrays. See you again next time.